Good afternoon. It's very nice to see you. We are going to start the EEE breakaway session at the Korea Ecodesign Forum. My name is Hong Soo-yeol, Director of the Korea Society for Circular Economy. I have the honor of serving as today's session moderator, and I'm very happy to see you here, and I really thank you for joining us. Do you know what day is it today? Today is a day where we don't use plastic bags anymore. Even the South Korean President Lee Jae-myung posted an article on his Facebook account mentioning the day of not using plastic bag, and he even announced that he's going to announce a plan to break away from the use of plastic. So I believe the government will speed up the implementation of no plastic policy. So it's a great coincidence that we have this forum on the day of Global No Plastic Bag Day. So circular economy starts with the production of recyclable products. So producers have really great responsibility. So producers need to do their part. That way we can create a circular economy. So on that journey, eco-design is very critical. Last year, EU established Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation, and they are going to enforce it, and we are very envious of that. Hopefully, Korea can adopt and enact the Eco-Design Act as soon as possible. So we conducted a survey on Korean businesses. What is most unpredictable? What is the trends that they are most afraid of and fear? That is the European eco-design regulation. So they cannot see in what direction the European eco-design policy will move. So they have a hard time responding to that, particularly with digital design and digital products, and they have great concerns about that. So there's a huge concerns among the Korean industry. So hopefully today's forum will address those concerns, and they can learn more about European trends. That way they can quench their thirst for information as well as address their fear and concern. We have two great speakers from the EU, and we also have two speakers from Korea. After all the presentations, we are going to have a photo session. After the photo session, we are going to have a panel discussion. The panel discussion will feature the speakers, and questions will be asked to those speakers to facilitate their discussions, and also there will be discussions on common topic, and then we are going to take questions from the floor. So each speaker will be given 20 minutes for their presentation. Now we are going to start the forum. The very first session is Ms. Raphael Henneken, Director of Sustainability Policy at Digital Europe. She will speak on the topic Key Issues in ESPR Implementation in the Electronics Industry. Please welcome her with a big round of applause.
Does it work now? Yes. Okay, very good. Okay, so starting again. So just a few words about our organization, Digital Europe, for those who don't know it. So we are a trade association based in Brussels. Our role is to represent the tech industry in the heart of the European institutions and to influence the very wide range of policies that affect our sector. So we count 120 corporate members from Europe, North America, and Asia. Few of them are from Korea, like LG and Samsung, or have activities there. We also have 41 national associations across the EU, including the UK and Turkey. And through these national associations, we are very proud to represent over 45,000 companies, including SMEs, across the globe. So over the years, we have actually expanded our membership beyond, let's say, traditional hardware manufacturing companies to companies who provide cutting-edge technologies for vertical sectors, such as finance, mobility, healthcare, or defense. So our main expertise, of course, relies on the pure digital policy. Take, for example, the recent EU AI Act, but we also advocate for a broader, resilient and stronger Europe open to like-minded partners. And we have developed, obviously, an expertise on sustainability topics, and I will focus today on the eco-design. We also, sorry, just going to the next slide, just another presentation of our activities, and I would like to mention that we also lead or contribute to EU-funded projects, such as CIRPAS, which leads on the deployment of the DPP. So as an association that represents notably OEMs, our vision is that competitiveness and sustainability should go hand by hand with digital technologies as a key accelerator. So the compass you see here is the European Commission Competitiveness Compass. So this is a concept that the Commission has recently announced with the idea that the Commission should set a path for Europe to be more competitive, to boost its growth, but also to be the first continent to be climate neutral. So we subscribe to this vision, and we believe that all sectors can really accelerate this path. Ecodesign is a very good example of that. The European Commission recently tried to calculate the impact of ecodesign legislation, and it's clear that it benefited the consumers by reducing the energy bills, but also the industry by creating new market avenues and jobs. The ecodesign is estimated to have created 346,000 jobs in total. So I will move then to the next challenge because, sorry, I think I missed a slide. Or we? Okay. Weirdly, a slide is missing, but that's fine. Okay. It's fine. Just to mention, and it's a pity that we can't see here because we have recently published a circular economy, let's say, guidebook last year to set out our vision for circularity in Europe. And our key recommendation was actually to focus on implementation. Because during the last mandate of the European Commission, a lot of new legislations have been adopted. And now it's time to focus on this implementation and make sure that it happens in the right way, that it happens timely, that it is done in coordination with stakeholders, and in a way that the new requirements can be measurable and enforceable. So electronic products have, let's say, a particular relationship with ecodesign. The SPR is new, but before the SPR in 2009, the Commission adopted the ecodesign framework already, applying to energy-related products. So it's 26 years of implementation already for electronic products. Just moving here to give you a snapshot of the different categories of products that are covered in Digital Europe, usually called the lots. So you can see here displays, smartphones, computers, external power supplies, servers and data storage products, and imaging equipment, Of course, as ESPR cover much more products, but we have, let's say, a specific expertise in those ones, adding some horizontal requirements on standby and off mode. And let's say that the ESPR really builds on this experience and add a new dimension with a focus on material efficiency requirements, but this is not totally new to us. If you take the example of smartphones and tablets, actually on the 20th of June, so last month, this new regulation has already entered into force. So now the smartphones have to comply with requirements on repairability, disassembly, and so on and so forth. So we have already, let's say, integrated this mindset of going beyond the energy efficiency requirements to the material efficiency requirements. So coming back to the challenges. So as we see, the first challenge is a timeline. With the ESPR, the Commission has set out a very ambitious timeline for itself and for us. So as I said, like now the legislative act is adopted in force, but a lot of work remains to be done for the implementation. Because the ESPR will affect these different categories of products, plus some new horizontal requirements, for example, on recyclability and recycled content, on all repairability. And to come up with this new, let's say, secondary legislation, the Commission has to produce some preparatory studies to really do this assessment. So it will be a lot of work, and as you can see, the timeline is not so long. If you take the case, for example, of the digital product passport, it is supposed to apply to batteries already in 2027. So we really have a question mark on whether this will be actually possible. And for these horizontal requirements, this is really a lengthy process. If you take the example as of the standby and off mode requirements that I mentioned before, this particular act took 8 years to be formulated and adopted by the European Commission with many delays. So a challenge for us as electronic industry will be to be part of this process and to hopefully anticipate those timelines and the uncertainties that come with those timelines. And we know that the redesign of products takes time. There is a life cycle of products, let's say of the production, and usually we ask the Commission to make sure that there is sufficient time between the adoption of the requirements and the actual entry into force. And we know also from experience that usually guidance is needed, Q&As, or sometimes even corrigendum, because those legislations are so technical that there is a bit of a trial and error, let's say, approach, and we really need to have this time as industry to integrate those requirements into the products. Another thing that is quite remarkable here is the fact that the Commission has set a transition timeline. So I'm coming back to this slide because you see that for each product category there is a different date. So there will be two, let's say, parallel streams. Because some products are still subject, let's say, to the former Ecodesign requirements. So if you take the example of servers and data storage products, but also the case of the computers, they are being reviewed at the moment, but under the old framework. And there is a deadline for that. The Commission is supposed to terminate, to complete this revision by the 30th of December 2026, which will come quite rapidly, actually, because we know that there are different steps in this process, and the Commission needs to consult the member states, expert groups, so all of this takes time. So again, there is a question mark as to whether the Commission will manage to complete these revisions by this deadline. And at the same time, the Commission is already starting to implement the ESPR. And as far as we are concerned, displays is the first product category in our case to be concerned by the ESPR, which means as well potential introduction of a DPP or similar concept for displays. Another challenge, which seems sometimes obvious, but it's good to remind it, is the regulatory interplay. Because the ESPR is just, let's say, one star in a galaxy of different legislations. And of course here, they are not all mentioned. We have done our internal, let's say, assessment that for one product, around more than 30 different European legislations can apply to the same product, which is, of course, really a lot for the OEMs. If you take the example of batteries and smartphones, so batteries is not represented here, but we saw a real question mark on which regulation should actually apply when it comes to removing batteries of smartphones. So we had to engage with the Commission as a trade association to make this clarification and ensure that it was clear that the smartphone regulation applying the lex specialis would take precedent over the batteries regulation. So from this galaxy of different legislations can of course come some questions. And we also always call the institutions to avoid double regulation so that the product cannot be, would not be covered by different requirements clashing with each other. There's also a very interesting development coming up with the revision of the WE directive. So that end of life is going to be really a landmark initiative for the Commission with a big ambition to improve it. And the Commission said that the WE revision would actually mirror the Ecodesign, but that remains to be seen how it will actually work. Those new horizontal requirements also represent a challenge for our industry. So as I mentioned, that's part of the novelties of the ESPR. The idea is that if different products have similarities, then the Commission could adopt requirements that would apply to those different products. So just an extract here of the working plan that the Commission recently published. So clearly there will be a focus on repairability, including a potential scoring. By the way, the picture that you see here, it's actually the French scoring, so it should be the EU one, but I took the French, sorry about that. And then our recycled content and recyclability of EEE. So the Commission is now starting the process of the assessment of these potential measures. But of course, we have some concerns because, again, we want to avoid double regulation. Then we always very much believe that eco-design regulation should be done on a case-by-case basis to be really tailored to the characteristics of each product group. This is really important because there is a high variability, especially if you take the example of recycled content. From one product to another, it's going to be very different to incorporate recycled content depending on features such as safety or durability or reliability. And it's the same for recyclability. And it's very important in eco-design, of course, to take into consideration the trade-offs, because sometimes if you want to, let's say, privilege or favor one factor, one parameter, such as recyclability, it can come at the detriment of another one, like the robustness of the product. So that's also something that, as an association, we always advocate for. But obviously, this is much more difficult in a horizontal requirement to make this assessment. And finally, of course, verification is going to be an issue when it comes to recycled content. I think it's not just the case for the electronics industry. I think other sectors are concerned, but there are some questions as to how the market surveillance authorities will be actually able to verify this recycled content, the percentage of presence of recycled content, and it really poses a question on the effectiveness of the surveillance and, of course, of competitive advantage. Because let's say that the good players that will play by the rules, for them it will be difficult to demonstrate that there are also some players who will not play by those rules. Finally, a last challenge, the wish of the Commission to increase transparency, which is a very good intention through different elements of the ESPR. So first on the disclosure of the unsold goods, and then, of course, through the DPP, which has been already quite discussed yesterday, so I won't go into the detail of the digital product passport, but just a few words. So indeed, on unsold goods, now the ESPR mandates that companies should disclose information on the volumes of unsold goods, unsold consumer products that they dispose of. We understand that for some products, the Commission even wants to ban actually the destruction of these unsold goods. For the case of electronic products, this is not a reality now, but it could become so in the future. And actually, this information that manufacturers will have to provide will be part of the assessment that the Commission will make, should they or not include all products in the scope of this ban. We have also some concerns here on how to disclose this information. We have just made some comments. We are making some comments right now to the Commission to actually flag that we should really clarify who is responsible for that disclosure, because of course, again, it's a long chain of operators, and also the distinction between B2B and B2C products, which is not always clear. So we want to make sure, basically, that the obligations are limited to the goods that are discarded from the facilities of the OEMs. Coming to the DPP and EPREL, so I'm mentioning EPREL here. So for those who are not familiar with EPREL, so this is a database that the Commission has created where all the energy, well, not all, but certain energy-related products are registered with the energy label. So the objective is to give a chance to the consumers to connect to the database and compare products. So for example, smartphones and tablets that I just mentioned are now on EPREL. And the Commission is leaving open the possibility to use EPREL rather than the DPP for some products. But here again, there is an uncertainty into which will be covered by what. And also what we see is that EPREL does not work like a DPP, so it has its own limitation. For example, you cannot, one of the features of the DPPs that the Commission would like to see is the possibility for some actors, to edit the information, to add the information, especially in the spirit of circularity, so adding that, how the life of the product has evolved, which is not possible under EPREL. And another big limitation that we see is that with the DPP, you would have the possibility as an OEM to include voluntary information. So for example, you could have information for the consumer on how to dispose of the product, on how to use the product in a sustainable way. But this is not something that is currently available in EPREL. So we think there might be a need for adjustments if EPREL is really to be used as a sort of equivalent to the DPP. And of course, the DPP itself, it has great potential, but as we used to say in Brussels, you need to learn to walk before you run, meaning that we really need to have a gradual approach to the DPP. And we also see that digitalization can happen in different ways. So even before we have the DPP fully enforced, we can have digital energy labels, for example, meaning that we can remove all the paper from the boxes of products and instead have a digital energy label. So that's part of the things that we advocate for as Digital Europe, and I hope I provided you with an overview of those challenges. Of course, we could go again and again, and there's many more to the eye than in this presentation, but I thank you very much for your attention. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, Director Henneken. It was a great presentation. Regarding the implementation of the ESPR, she shared the trends in Europe, and she actually highlighted tasks and how we can prepare the timeline and how we can harmonize many different regulations. We need to consider the characteristics of products, how we can ensure realistic regulations. There are many different environmental criteria required by ESPR, and they need to be harmonized, or they could cause side effects. So she shared the current trend and also many challenges facing the ESPR in Europe. Once again, please give her a big round of applause. During the panel discussion, I'm going to raise some questions. Let me ask those questions already. In the EU European Committee, they plan to cancel Green Directive Plan. They, because of the trade-offs between ESPR and Green Trade Directive. Maybe that was the reason. What are the relations between ESPR and Green Claim Directive? Would you please give us details on that? In the European industry, what how they look at ESPR? Do they really think they can comply with ESPR? What are the reactions of the industry? Let's move on to the second presentation. We will hear from Mr. Jung-ung, manager at the Korea Electronics Association. He will present on the topic, current status and challenges of circularity assessment system for EEE in Korea. Please welcome him.
Is Daniel and I am from the Korea Electronics Association. I am delighted to have this opportunity to share information about Korea's program at the Korea EU Ecodesign Forum. I would also like to thank KITECH for the invitation. I would like to discuss the current status of the Material and Structural Assessment Scheme, which was created to encourage eco-design and improve the recyclability of electrical and electronic products. I would also like to address the challenges facing the industry. I would like to cover three main points: an overview of the Material and Structural Assessment Scheme, operating results for 2024, and challenges and implications for the electronics industry. The appendix contains slides detailing the legal framework of MSAS, the 49 product categories, and the evaluation criteria. Due to time constraints, I will omit my explanation of the appendix. Thank you for your understanding. The MSAS is a self-assessment program implemented since 2008 to improve the recyclability of electrical and electronic products. From now on, I will refer to it as EEEs. Every year, domestic manufacturers and importers select representative models for each product group, evaluate improvements in materials and structure, and submit reports to the government. The purpose of this program is to improve the recyclability of EEEs, reduce hazardous substances, raise companies' awareness of eco-design, and promote recycling activities. This program applies to manufacturers and importers of 49 types of EEEs. The products covered are those designed for use with direct current of 1,500 volts or less, or alternating current of 1,000 volts or less. There is no distinction between household and commercial use. A representative model is a model that a company used to conduct assessments. One model must be selected and evaluated for each product group once a year. Selection criteria are based on production or import volume. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy and the Ministry of Environment jointly implement this program, and the KEA is responsible for receiving and verifying assessment reports. Companies are required to prepare and submit material and structure assessment reports, as well as retain records of evaluation activities. Those that fail to submit these reports will be subjected to fines. Additionally, manufacturers must incorporate material and structural improvements into the design stage, and importers must confirm that suppliers have implemented these improvements during the import process. As the law states that make efforts, this is not a mandatory requirement. However, it is an important factor in evaluating material and structural improvement. The MSAS assessment criteria consists of three aspects: material, structure, and management system. The directive also defines evaluation criteria for material and structural improvements, but they are more like a framework. KA determines more detailed assessment criteria based on its own standard CE 3300. In terms of material improvements, a company evaluates simplification of plastic material types, expansion of recyclable plastic use, whether material symbols are marked for plastic parts, and degree of increase in the use of recycled materials. In terms of structural improvement, a company evaluates ease of separation, ease of disassembly, improvement in single material structure, degree of reduction in raw materials, degree of product volume reduction, and packaging material weight ratio and reduction degree. With regard to management systems, a company evaluates whether pre-assessment registers are kept, whether recycled information is provided to interested parties, whether recommendations are implemented, whether R&D is conducted, and whether the products are manufactured considering the environmental impact. This scheme's operational process can be divided into two main stages. The first stage is pre-assessment. Manufacturers conduct assessments to reflect the material and structural improvements in the design process, and importers conduct assessments to confirm the material and structural improvement efforts of overseas suppliers when importing products. The next step is the submission of the assessment report. Companies must submit their assessment reports to KEA by July of the following year after manufacturing or importing occurs. KEA verifies and reviews the appropriateness of the assessment reports and submits the results to the government. As the submission of assessment reports is still ongoing this year, I would like to describe the results for 2024. A total of 513 companies submitted 1,128 assessment reports in 2024. As the table below shows, manufacturers account for 26% of the domestic appliance market, importers account for 56%, and companies that both manufacture and import account for 18%. The fact that pure manufacturers account for only 26% indicates that importers have a very large share of the domestic appliance market. The chart on the right shows the number of assessment reports, or the number of models for which assessment reports were submitted. Computer product groups account for the largest share because they include various peripheral devices such as monitors, electronic whiteboards, keyboards, and mice. Small appliances are generally imported products, and the number of assessment reports submitted for these products is also high. Now, I'd like to discuss the results of each question. First are the questions regarding material improvement. In terms of the number of plastic material types, there are products with only one type. Most products have 2 to 5 types, while products with 6 or more types account for over 20%. In the case of labels and stickers, almost all products use removable labels or engraved markings. In the case of plastic material labeling, 32% of products still do not comply with ISO standards. This shows that although unimaterialization is an important factor in expanding plastic recycling, it is a very challenging task for companies. And the larger the product, the more types of materials tend to be used. In addition, overseas original design manufacturer, ODM suppliers, and even further, their component suppliers often label plastic materials in ways that do not comply with ISO standards or do not label them at all. Therefore, raising awareness of material labeling among overseas suppliers is also an important task. In terms of recycled plastic use, 73% of products do not use any recycled plastic. this shows that using recycled plastic is a very challenging task for companies. It is positive that nearly 90% of products have eliminated PVC. In the case of synthetic resin packaging materials, 26% of products do not use them at all, and 34% of products use less than 5%, indicating steady progress in replacing synthetic resins with paper. The following questions are related to structural improvements. First, in terms of ease of separation, nearly 90% of products are considering ease of separation during design progress, and 96% of products can be separated using only standard tools. In terms of the number of joint types, more than half of the products can be disassembled with only one or two tools. However, some products have a large number of joint types and need improvements to simplify the fastening method. The following questions are related to the management system and are categorized by manufacturer and importer. In the management system section, we examine 1. R&D efforts to promote recycling, 2. Ecodesign processes, 3. Considerations of environmental impacts, 4. Record management by provision of recycling information to stakeholders, and 6. Whether product improvement were made in response to stakeholder requests. Many responses to question 6 were no, because even companies that have never received requests from stakeholders answered no. In the case of manufacturers, more than half have management systems in place for R&D, eco-design processes, or providing recycling information. However, many companies still lack these systems. The following are the responses from importers. Although some are specialized in appliances, many are trading companies and distributors. Importers face many difficulties when introducing eco-design systems because they lack R&D personnel and departments. Nevertheless, it was found that over 20% of companies have set up systems for collecting and recycling products, as well as for providing recycling information to stakeholders. Based on the assessment results, we have identified 3 challenges and implications that the domestic electronics industry is facing. The first is data collection and verification. The domestic home appliance industry has a higher proportion of importers, and with global supply chains diversifying to China, Japan, Vietnam, and the EU, cooperation with these chains is necessary to collect and verify material and structural data. ODM importers lack R&D personnel, and they have to rely on ODM suppliers for material and structural assessments. They also lack the ability to verify the accuracy of the information provided by suppliers. Regarding the content of recycled materials, many overseas product or component suppliers either do not provide analysis data, respond with simple email replies or official documents, or even refuse to respond at all. Tools need to be developed to improve overseas companies' awareness of and accessibility to Korean programs such as global websites, promotional materials, guides, and tools. Data verification should be approached from the perspective of limited assurance rather than reasonable assurance, as the former is more realistic. The second are technical and market barriers. Product groups that have been on the market for a long time have limited potential for improvement. There is also a tendency for the number of plastic materials and joint types to increase with the size of EEEs. Small appliances, even when designed for easier disassembly and separation, face the limitation of producing only a small amount of recoverable raw materials. There is a significant variation in product size and shape within the same product group, making it difficult to impose uniform material structure requirements. there is a trade-off between market consumption trends and material and structure. For example, the trend toward larger TVs improves functionality but makes it difficult to reduce weight or increase recycled content. A shortage of recycled plastic supply is a major challenge for the domestic appliance industry in increasing recycled material content. Material and structural benchmarks and best practices need to be developed by analyzing various types of physical models. And reasonable assessment criteria for material and structural improvements need to be developed based on market trends and product analysis. The third is accelerating the eco-design capabilities of SMEs. The expansion of the Korean Extended Producer Responsibility Program to cover all products, the Promotion Act for the Transition to a Circular Economy Society, the EU ESPR, and the Ecodesign are among the environmental changes, both domestic and international, that require more products to meet stricter requirements. Developing an eco-design process and conducting R&D on material and structural improvement remain significant challenges for small and medium-sized enterprises, particularly importers, due to limited capital and human resources. It is anticipated that more new companies and products will be subject to the material and structural assessment scheme in the future. However, regulatory measures alone have limitations in achieving qualitative improvements in industrial circularity. We need to support the establishment of an eco-design management system, provide guidance on preparing material and structural assessment reports, promote outstanding companies and products, and support the development of unimaterials. Developing and disseminating a differentiated eco-design management system model for manufacturers and importers is necessary to raise awareness that eco-design is not exclusive to manufacturers. Today, I focused on the current status and implications of the Material and Structural Improvement Assessment Scheme, but I believe that this case can also provide valuable insights for the EU ESPR and Ecodesign policies. Therefore, I hope that circular economy and eco-design policies will be successfully established in South Korea, the EU, and other countries. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
네, 엄정훈 과장님 발표
Thank you very much, Mr. Basically, he gave a presentation about MSAS, Material and Structure Assessment Scheme of Korea. Data gathering and verification, and the lack of supply of recyclable plastic, and SMEs' difficulties and need for support. So he gave details about these topics. Nevertheless, this scheme is not mandatory scheme, so it has limitations because it's based on voluntary basis. So it's very hard for home appliance companies to actively participate in this system. With this system alone, do we think we can sufficiently respond to the EU ESPR, which is a very strong regulation? In the panel discussion later, in order to respond to the EU ESPR, how we need to improve our domestic schemes and systems. If you give us more supplementary explanation, it will be great. So we'll look forward to the panel discussion. Let's move on to the next presentation. So Mr. Sirut Ronghan, he's going to make a presentation about EU cases of a TPP. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Yep.
You press this button, go to the next slide, this button, go to the previous slide.
All right, thank you. All right.
Good, what is it, afternoon everybody. Thank you for having me here and for letting me give a presentation about well, what we're doing with digital product passports in the electronic sector in the Netherlands and in Europe. Allow me to first very briefly introduce myself. There we go, fantastic. As mentioned, my name is Sjoerd Ronge. I'm from the Dutch Research Institute of TNO, the Netherlands being that small red dot there on the map. In Northwestern Europe. We've also recently opened an office here in Korea in case you don't want to travel as far to meet my colleagues. And then within the Netherlands, a small country, TNO is a big institute with some 4,000 employees. Part of us, my part of the organization works on digital product passports across various domains, including electronics. Besides that, TNO works on a bunch of other domains. The main thing to take away from this is our institute tries to work on public-private partnerships where we have government, private companies and research institutes coming together to tackle societal challenges, for example, in digitization or sustainability, which is my sort of main area of interest. And on that sustainability topic, I would like to spend a little bit more time because it is very tempting to dive into legislation straight away, but that makes it seem as if this circular economy and digital product passport ID is only there because lawmakers want it to be there, which I don't think is the case, right? If we take a look at the world right now, we want to become sustainable in a variety of areas, including ecology, that is to say lower our carbon emissions, economic sustainability, that is to say our companies need to keep making money, right? Otherwise they will just be outcompeted out of the market. And finally, social sustainability, how do we want to live together, right? What type of world are we building together? And if I may be a little bit provocative here, I don't think the electronic sector is currently doing a perfect job. There's some room for improvement. If you look at these stats from the World Health Organization, there's some, well, to me, frightening statistics there about how much material is being wasted, about the sort of harm to personal health that e-waste is doing. And in general, you know, we throw away a lot of materials right now that are polluting the environment and the people that live in it. That's not a problem for which I take no blame. If you look at this map here from that same study, you'll see the green countries here are exporting e-waste and the red ones are importing e-waste or get the e-waste dumped on their doorstep. You'll notice there, I'm from the Netherlands at the bottom, my e-waste is one of the big contributors in the world, right? I'm the problem here, if you will. So plenty of things to do here to become more sustainable and yeah, work ahead of us. Right. Besides the sustainability angle, there's another reason to be working towards sustainability, at least there is in our research, which has to do with strategic autonomy. That is to say the ability for Europe to keep our economy going and our companies operating even when we find that our supply chains are being disrupted. Right? So if we are fully reliant on importing material and exporting waste, we are only one ship stuck sideways in the Suez Canal away from our entire economy grinding to a halt. Whereas if we are able to recycle or remanufacture a lot of products or keep products and materials in our economy for longer, our dependency on external contributors goes down, right? So this would lower our dependency or our risk, if you will, for trade wars, for example. Right, so we want to move to a circular economy because of sustainability reasons, because of strategic autonomy reasons, and it happens to be that there's also legislation that wants us to move in that direction, right? And in fact, there is quite a lot of legislation. I won't spend too much time on this because it was already very well presented also in the first presentation about what's going on in Europe. Maybe interesting here on the side, you see one of those energy labels for phones now, including a repairability score there at the bottom. It's over there. And then on the very left, you see the same table from the ESPR working plan that is sort of highlighting which domains we will get under this legislation. But in general, the takeaway I would like you to have from all this legislation is that it doesn't matter that much which sector you're active in. you will have to move to more circularity. You will need to provide more information about your circular business processes and the provenance or lineage of your products, right? It's a question of when, not if. Right. So hopefully, if we all sort of work on this, right, we can become more sustainable altogether and society at large. Now let's jump a little bit to what is it that we are specifically doing to make this transition happen, right? So this is what I mentioned already, right? We want to get more circularity for the sustainability, and to ensure we become more circular, we need to share more product information or share more information to our value chains, right? We need to know where our products come from and what they're still worth at the end of their life if you want to make efficient use of them in your recycling context. Right. So there's a lot of things going on to make that happen, right? To make those product passports and that data sharing stuff happen. This is a picture we made in the Surpass 2 project. There's a couple of different shapes and forms it's taking now, but the general idea is we have these legal requirements. So that's the orange box on the left for you with, for example, the ESPR or the battery regulation. That's high-level EU legislation telling companies this is what you need to report on, right? For most industries, that legal requirement is probably going to be too abstract. You'll need more details than European law is going to provide to you, right? If you actually want to make use of this and you want to create value from this as well in your organization. So what we expect will happen is that sectoral organizations, coalitions of companies, right? Maybe countries, but coalitions of organizations will get together. They'll take a look at this legislation and they'll discuss how to expand that. How can we create value from that? So an example is, as I'm sure will be discussed in one of the, I think the room over there on batteries. In Europe, we've seen this battery pass initiative that started with the battery regulation, and they took that as a sector and expanded that to something that adds value to the whole sector, right? So that goes a little bit beyond legislation already, and it's a common agreement within the sector. Now, if you take this agreement, or this standard, if you will, and you want to implement that within your company, you are probably going to find out you need even more, right? To make it meet your business processes, to make it fit into your systems. So you're going to expand the standard again, right? Which is here on the very right side, the dark blue part, if you will. And our expectation, my expectation, is that we will see a structure like this reflected in the digital product passport in primarily the information model or the semantic model, the information need of the product passport, right? Where we'll see a small legally required set of data, a large sectoral set of data that will be common between product categories or between companies, and then finally some extensions for an individual company. You may be realizing now that just understanding the legislation is only the starting point of this bigger sort of task ahead of all of us when it comes to product passports, circularity, and then sustainability, right? So another reason not to focus only on the EU legislation. It's a great starting point, but it's not going to be the final part of your journey here. Right. Now, I promised to give some examples of what we are working on. This is one of them. This is an EU project. It's called Da Capo. For those of us that are into music, that also is used in music when you go back to the beginning, right? The Da Capo project is about how we integrate IT systems with circularity and sustainability. And it looks into quite a wide range of tools, right? Everything from large language models to product passports, semantic models, a wide range of topics. One thing I would like particularly to highlight here is we have a pilot line there, a collaboration in the project with the Dutch phone maker called Fairphone. They are quite small in gross revenue, so I'm not sure if anyone here has heard of them. But their whole claim to fame is that their phones are very, very repairable and very sustainable. They're also quite a bit more expensive than competing phones, I have to add there. What's nice here is that Fairphone has turned this idea of circularity and sustainability in their whole business model of their product, right? Their whole unique selling point is that you can unscrew the phone, you can easily replace the screen, and In fact, my better half, my wife, she has a Fairphone. She dropped it quite badly a month ago, and it took her about 10 minutes afterwards to fix the screen. And keep in mind, she is not an electrical engineer. She's an ecologist by training. So this is not her strong suit. Besides the repairability, these phones also contain a lot of recycled materials. They use a lot of repurposed components. So in general, sustainability here as a value proposition, right? And that is then supported by a wide range of IT tools to provide insight in that. And, well, I can recommend you take a look at their website. It's quite nice, and they launched a new phone 2 weeks ago. So everything is new on the Fairphone website. Right. Second project that is quite large, in fact, quite a bit larger in Europe, is the Surpass 2 project. This is an EU project that looks solely into digital product passports and how we can go beyond the legal requirements and add value to multiple domains of organizations. So it's a project that is now running for about a year out of its 3-year timeline. It has about 50 EU organizations involved, and through the involvement of further pilot lines, there is over 100 different companies that participate. Right. In this project, we have defined an architecture, an IT design for digital product passports that you could use in a wide range of domains. What we're now doing is we're applying this architecture and these the associated semantic models or information models in a number of different pilot lines. And you can see all those pilot lines on the slide here. So you'll notice there are some of them that are on apparel or textiles, right? There are some in construction or tires, tires being one of those interesting product categories actually in the EPREL database that do not use power, but that's a side topic, I suppose. So we have a number of domains that are being covered in the Surpass 2 project that all want to make use of the same digital architecture to enable circularity and become more sustainable. You'll see quite a few of them have to do with electronics. Now, these pilot lines have yet to be fully implemented, so I can unfortunately not yet tell you what the added value is for these companies of implementing this. Right? But what we are seeing is that there is multiple types of companies, all including their suppliers and customers in these pilot lines, trying to implement systems here to become more sustainable. And it's not just the categories that are covered under legislation again, right? So for example, audio equipment is not one, at least I'm familiar with, under direct product passport legislation. So again, legislation as a starting point, not as the final destination of this initiative. I can recommend you take a look at the Surpass 2 website as well. There is a lot of information on there about the variety of EU legislation that's being put out and communications by the European Commission. There's also publications on the direction that the IT architecture is taking, and some suggestions on how companies can make money off of this as well, for those that are interested. Right. And that sort of brings me to my final slide already. Which is that I think it's up to you or us or everybody in this room to make this happen, right? We have a lot of technology, we have a lot of the concepts figured out. There's a lot of organizations that have a lot of expertise already in this area that you can ask for help for or reach out to. There's a lot of examples of companies that are already working on this topic. It's now up to all of us to figure out what the circularity and data sharing in my value chain, what does that mean in my business, in my organization? How will I design my products, or how will I deal with the end of life of products to make the most out of this and make this transition to circularity so we get rid of those horrendous statistics from the World Health Organization that I started with, right? That's at the end what we want to diminish. We want to reduce the amount of e-waste and the pollution that causes, for example. So that is my call to action, and I hope that this has inspired you a little bit to get started and or continue your journey.
네, 롱앤 코디네이터님 발표 잘 들었습니다. 롱앤 코디네이터님께서는 결국 전자산업의 지속
For Mr. Longhan, I have some questions. So he shared many DPP projects and sustainability related projects. He said regulation is the starting point, but you need to have a more detailed understanding and application of the specific requirements for each sector and each product. So in the panel discussion, I want you to address the following. So audiences are here want to know how the DPP will be implemented. So regarding DPP, we have some concerns. There are many requirements or required information in accordance with ESPR. How we can compile and gather all that data and information. ESPR requires a lot of information. So to what extent, to what level do we need to gather and collect information? So how the European industry is responding to the requirement? Are there any concerns raised by the industry in the EU? Or how the Korean companies can respond to the DPP and data requirements? If you can discuss that in the panel discussion, it will be very useful. Let's move on to the next presentation.
So the last presentation will be on LG Electronics regulatory compliance activities for resource efficiency. The presenter here is Oh Jin-young from LG Electronics.
네, 안녕하세요.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Oh Jin-young. I am principal researcher of LG Electronics. Thank you very much for inviting me to today's forum. So we are joined by some foreign guests, but we have a simultaneous translation. So I'm going to speak in Korean. So I'm gonna talk to you about the LG Electronics regulatory compliance activities regarding resource efficiency. Here is the table of content of my presentation. I'd like to talk about what is the goal and what is the performance achievements. And some have things to do with regulations, some have nothing to do with regulations in our efforts. And as mentioned by other speakers already, I'd like to talk to you about the trends of the regulation regarding resource efficiency. And also, I'd like to talk about Ecodesign and Friends Repairability and Durability Index. And then I'd like to talk about what kind of response LG is working on right now. And also I'd like to talk to you about participation activities and international standardization. So our ESG strategy is 3C and 3D. 3C is regarding the planet environment. So 3C represents carbon neutrality, circularity, and clean technology like using renewable the energy. So circularity is regarding recycling of waste, and clean technology is like developing products and services considering the environment. And 3D is related to people and supply chains and employment, women and people with disabilities, and also it represents accessibility. So we are currently working on 3C and 3D. And regarding circularity, 3C is directly associated with circularity. Briefly, so we aim to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. So we have reduced 53,000 tons on YOY. And also we have a plan to use renewable energy 100%. And 10.1% will be is actually renewable energy. And today's topic is circularity. And 95% of waste recycling by 2030, and also e-waste collection. As we have annual goal of e-waste collection, and when it comes to clean technology, so we like to reduce carbon emissions by developing highly efficient products, and also we're gonna use recycled plastics materials in manufacturing our products. So regarding e-waste, so the entire process of e-waste are being managed directly by ourselves, and then we are reinforcing waste disposal and management. So we are setting the aims and monitoring of the vendors in order to achieve our goal. Especially some foreign subsidiaries are not meeting our goals, so that we have very close monitoring of overseas subsidiaries. So overall, e-waste volume is being reduced. And the overall ratio is gradually on the rise. Next is on the e-waste collection. We established CRC, or Chill Cell Recycling Center, back in 2001. So we are providing e-waste collection services in 56 countries right now. So this is directly associated to regulation. So in highly regulated areas, our performances are better. And in 2023, 450,000, and our goal is 800,000 by 2030. And that was mentioned by Mr. Already. That is regarding product structure and material improvement. We are working on this initiative in order to maximize resource efficiency. So we are improving product structure and material at the product design phase. This is the case of 50-inch television. So weight was reduced by 19% compared to the baseline. Product volume was reduced by 7%, and the weight of packaging material was reduced by 3%. And with the structural improvement, the fastening parts were reduced by 21% from 33 to 26. So I like to speed up. And also when it comes to post-consumer recycled plastics use, and then our goal is to have a cumulative 600,000 tons by 2030. And these days, microplastics is a global concern. So we really care about the packaging materials. So we are trying to replace plastics with other alternative materials. So plastics are the mostly used, especially styrofoam. So they will be replaced with paper, cushioning, and mold. They have already been reflected in small size items, but we are currently developing our technologies in order to apply these to bigger size products. That all of them are the efforts we are making at LG. So I'm going to be very brief because we are running out of time. So as part of regulatory trends, so I'm going to talk about ESPR and the Friends Repairability and Durability Index. So there have been detailed explanation on ESPR already, and product scope is broader, and there are more evaluation items. And also there are the horizontal requirements. So the same criteria will be applied to similar products, and also digital passport, DPP. So the quantitative data disclosure and transparency is becoming more important in terms of DPP. And there are 18 key product aspects regarding ESPR, out of which 13 items are related to resource efficiency. So overall direction is going toward resource efficiency. In fact, from 2021, actually the Ecodesign regulation in the EU has been newly implemented. So previously, it was focused on only energy efficiency, performance, and energy label, but now there is more emphasis on resource efficiency, reliability, recyclability, and repairability. When it comes to French repairability, durability, which was enforced in 2021, initially, repairability was the focus of this French regulation. However, starting from this year, especially in the case of television and washing machines, it has been upgraded with the emphasis on durability for these two product categories. So the focus has been shifted from repairability toward durability. That is evolving. So the materials, the components, life, information disclosure, and testing are part of the requirements. And also it includes upgrade and software update, which are also requirements. So product durability is the focus of this index. And again, this index is evolving. I have been briefly talking about the regulatory trends, and from now on, how we are responding to these regulations at LG Electronics. This is Ecodesign's resource efficiency requirement and our response at LG. First of all, for all the countries with Ecodesign requirements, we have websites in those countries, and within our website, we have a separate page titled Right to Repair. So this page, stakeholders, including consumers, can identify all the relevant information regarding right to repair product. For example, the model and product category can be selected, and then you can find a list of service parts, and then description of service parts is also available. And then there is also information regarding how to order service part. Basically, so like there is service call center operating in each country. So people may contact call center, and then they can explain what are the symptoms, and then they can get the explanation how to order the spare part. So service part will be identified by model, and then those parts can be purchased by making inquiries into the service center. And apart from that, there are online shops where accessories are being sold. And also, third-party sellers are linked to this website by country. So people can find all the relevant information at this homepage. And next is regarding repair information. So that is redirected to troubleshooting page. So symptoms and product categories can be selected here on this page. So general failures and how to respond can be identified here on this page. And LG EU has been operating YouTube channel from 2011. So if you go to this YouTube channel, there are more than 300 videos regarding product repair. For example, how to separate washing machine's detergent box, or making replacement and troubleshooting of a TV, monitor, or how to disassemble product, how to replace critical components. All the relevant information is available on this page. And lastly, with regard to eco-design, so this is kind of challenging the requirement for us, providing information to local professional repairers and qualifying them. So we are using this page, Right to Repair. So the local professional repairers can submit their credentials, documents, so that the people in the local subsidiaries will evaluate their eligibility. And once eligibility is proven, they are granted the right to get access to LG Electronics service portal, so that they can get access to service manual and bulletins and other information. And also they can place an order on service part. So all of these functions are already available. Next, I'd like to talk about France Repairability and Durability Index and what kind of activities currently we are performing. Actually, this is directly related to product development and evaluation. So this information is confidential. So I can only say what kind of evaluation process we are applying. So this is for the France Durability Index on the measurement. So we are applying 1 through 6 for product development. And the last one, the remaining one, is evaluated right before sales. And then we finalize the report. So out of these items, what is most important is resistance, number 1, and disassembly. So these are the main items during development process: resistance and disassembly. So that is directly associated with the life of part and the relevant testing. So we conduct testing by module to identify resistance, and the same is true for disassembly. So we have designated service parts that need to be disassembled by product category. So how many steps are required for disassembly of a part? And what kind of fastening components required during disassembly? That's why we are testing these during development process. And availability of a spare part, documentation, and guarantee. These are related to our company policy. So we are relying on policy evaluation in order to finalize this report. So these are the items we are evaluating during the development process, and we are utilizing our internal system, and then we submit the final report to the French authority. And as for the spare part, our process is making assessment of a spare part internally. So that's why we have a dual structure of assessment, and then the report is finalized, and they are being distributed to our stakeholders. Lastly, we are involved in standardization activities. So there is a quantitative assessment regarding eco-design, which is becoming more important. So we are putting more weight on standardization activities as well. For example, there are working groups regarding LCA and carbon emissions and e-waste and recyclability. These are the working groups we are involved in. And then we are also engaged with resource efficiency E and FIFO. And the hot topic is digital product passport DPP. The working group is currently being formed, so we are closely watching what is going on with this working group. To conclude my presentation, I am responding to these regulations and I am monitoring the regulatory trends very closely, and these are the implications. So these eco-designed regulations are being evolving in terms of recyclability, digital product passport, and transparency. So from the perspective of enterprises, data management is becoming more important. Previous eco-designed regulations, we just needed only two departments coordinating together. But now it is being expanded to resource efficiency. So we need to involve all the other departments, even including sales, procurement. So we need a collaboration across the entire enterprise. So I think that department level collaboration and coordination is very important. That is why the role of compliance department is also very critical. Right now, these are the European regulations, and only it is eco-design regulations are affecting the other countries that are adopting eco-design. But we think that that will be adopted globally, just like recycling regulations. So from the perspective of the company, there are regulations globally, but if evaluation mechanism is different, that will be burden on private companies. So I think that international standardization is very important. So I think that we need to pay more attention to international standardization. Thank you very much for listening. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Oh, for your presentation. There are various activities domestically going on at LG Electronics, and many people would be interested in France repairability index and the policy. And the case of LG Electronics was well explained in response to France index. So he talked about what kind of activities they are doing, and especially in response to eco-design, especially from the perspective of LG Electronics. I like to say, what is the biggest challenge? What is the main concern in terms of eco-design regulations? And we have new government these days. In order to respond to eco-design regulations, do you have any idea? Do we need to have any policy change at the government level? So I'd like to hear from you from the perspective of business. We have heard of all the 4 presentations so far, and now we'd like to have panel discussion. So we'd like to make a seating arrangement in order to have panel discussions. But before doing that, let us have a group photo. So I'd like to invite all the presenters to come forward to have group photo. So please stay with us until the end of panel discussions.
이번 세션까지 포함해서 이
So there will be a satisfaction survey about the circular economy festivals. Please scan this QR code to join the satisfaction survey. Thank you.
게다가
테스트.
네, 그럼 지금부터 패널 토론 시작하도록.
let us start the panel discussion. So we listen to the 4 presentations. So right after each presentation, I asked questions. So in the order of the presentations, please address the questions. Mr. Henneken, Mr. Ms. Longhan, and Mr. Oh. In this order, you need to address questions, please. Your presentation was quite short. I think we have enough time to take a few questions from the floor. So our presenters, let's listen to their answers first to the questions I raised right after their presentation. Ms. Henneken, would you please answer the questions?
Just checking if it works. It does. Thank you very much. I think your first question was about the EU Green Claims Directive. So indeed, there are lots of developments at the moment in the EU. As you may know, we have new institutions because we have renewed the European Commission in 2024. So at each beginning of a new mandate, there is a new policy direction given by the institutions and the political groups. And clearly there is a shift in what Europe wants to, what the EU wants to achieve. And there is a very strong focus on competitiveness and boosting the EU growth. And that shift has very important influence on all the green files. And the Green Claim Directives is one example of where we can see this shift. So basically, this is a proposal that has been made during the last mandate to prevent greenwashing. So the idea of the Commission was to impose some requirements to the industry to substantiate their claims. So basically, a company could not just say, look, my product is more sustainable. They would have to, substantiate that, and there will be a verification of these claims. And very recently, and I think that you are really, on top of the EU developments here, it was, I think, a couple of weeks ago, we have heard that the Commission has proposed to actually withdraw this proposal. So it was actually very advanced in the process because it was already being discussed by the Parliament and the Council. And this is actually a reflection of this shift. So it's not directly related to the eco-design because let's say that green claims is really about the way you market your product, while eco-design is really about the way you design your product. But it shows that there is this new shift that could also impact implementation of the ESPR, because clearly the Commission has a strong mandate of reducing the burden for the companies, making it easier for companies to comply. So as an industry association, this is something that we are also advocating for, and in the implementation of the Ecodesign Sustainable Products Regulation, we will of course remind the Commission that they have committed to simplify the life of the companies so that the requirements should be proportionate. So thank you for your question because it gives me the opportunity to really reflect on this shift.
그러니까 ESPR을 통해서
So through ESPR, product environment related information need to be managed in a very transparent way, disclosing the information to consumers through ESPR, especially product environment related information when that is disclosed in a transparent way through ESPR. And then there is a possibility that when ESPR is implemented, then that will prevent greenwashing. That's why Green Claims Directive would not be needed. As far as I know, that is that sort of claim in the EU as well. Is that true?
The Commission would maybe argue the previous Commission would argue differently. I think there was really an intention from the previous legislators to have an EU harmonized framework on how you sell your products to the consumers. Because even with more transparency in the eco-design framework, you could still make those claims and sort of mislead the consumers in a way. So it's really like a consumer-oriented legislation. But here is very much of a political game, I have to say. And by the way, this Green Claims Directive is not totally off the table yet. So the Commission has made this intention. They still need to have the backing of the Council and the Parliament. So let's say that it's the beginning of a saga, of a new of a new drama, and it will take a bit of time before we know what will actually happen to this directive. But it's a good way to see it that eco-design anyway provides some reassurance to the consumers. That's a good way to put it indeed.
네, 질문하고 싶은 게 저도 무척 많은데
I have a lot of questions to ask, but due to time constraints, I need to move on to the next panelist. Mr. Would you please address your questions? You can use this mic. Let me answer your question. So the MOTIE and the Ministry of Environment are implementing the material and structure evaluation scheme. So this is my personal perspective. I would like to say three things. First, Regarding the recycled material content required by the EU ESPR, it's already mandatory in Korea in accordance with other laws. Recently, at the National Assembly, the bill passed to make it mandatory to regarding the recycled content, material content. And regarding plastic, it's mandatory, and I believe the application will be expanded to other products. We have the special act on the promotion of transition to circular economy. So we will expand the application of the law to other laws, and the repairability, recyclability, and low carbon emissions, all these are defined in the law. So within the law, it says need to make efforts. But industry sees that clause will be included as part of the circulatory assessment. So it's going to be mandatory soon. So how this system, material and structure scheme, should develop, there are two things. First, in terms of international standardization, what kind of information, what kind of data we need to collect, that's an important element. But who are the participants? What companies are participating? That is also very important. When it comes to home appliances, the imports take up huge part. So domestically, instead of we are just managing them and controlling them, what's more important is global collaboration. So double regulation should be prevented, according to the previous speaker. I really agree with you on that. For that, so we need standards for the resources efficiency. So EU and Korea should have some standards that we can abide by. So by doing so, we can actually work together on data collection, and it will lead to better data monitoring. Let me tell you one more thing. So as the EPR expands to the entire products in Korea, the number of items and scope will be expanded for our scheme as well. So new products and new companies will be subjected to our scheme. Of course, they will include small and medium enterprises. So it's not realistic to demand them to follow these rules right off the bat. So we need to provide support for these new companies to be included in this scheme. So support and consulting services should be provided. To do so, we need to expand the ecosystem of this material and structure assessment system. So this MSAS is unique in Korea. So the MSAS is very unique in terms of having incentives and support, as well as the mandatory requirements. Some people say that you have obligations to submit your reports, but it's not really mandatory. But please take this as the starting point for the Ecodesign Act. And I really hope the industry people will cooperate with us. And also we can offer incentives to better performing businesses. That way we can incentivize more companies to participate. So what I asked was actually, there is a circulatory assessment scheme, and also packaging related regulations. And also there's a guidelines for improving the materials for electronics. So all these systems are scattered across all these many different acts. And also all these regulations, they say you need to make efforts. It's not really mandatory. So people question the effects of these laws. So we need some integrated law that includes more stronger regulations and clauses. Don't we really need it? So that was my question, actually. So regarding improving the materials and structure, so you agree on the need to increase and strengthen the regulations, right? So because I am situated between the MOTIE, Ministry of Industry, and the Ministry of Environment, I'm in a difficult position to answer that question. So our scheme, MSAS, deals with multiple products. And if there's an area that require really great improvements, the Ministry of Environment makes it mandatory with a different system, and there's ongoing discussions to improve it. So let's move on to the third speaker. Mr. Longhan, would you please answer your questions?
That was an on button. All right. So you asked me how digital product passports are being implemented in Europe right now. How the information that should be reported is being gathered, and maybe also what Korean companies could do with that, if I understood your question correctly. To maybe start with how the information is currently being gathered, what I'm seeing, and we're seeing in our research and our projects together with companies, is that a lot of the information that companies need to report on or want to share with their partners is already available in the organization. They already have that information. It's often, however, distributed over a wide set of internal IT systems. So this is really a digitalization challenge, right? It's a problem of connecting your different IT systems and company departments to each other, which usually organizations will do in a sort of planned IT migration or IT development, and they just include something about reporting or product passports. You could do that in other ways as well, but that's the most common approach I'm seeing right now. When it comes then to sort of reporting out this information once you have it, right? So sharing this information with partners. What we are often seeing is that, of course, there is no formal product passport standard yet, right? That's being developed in Europe and other standardization initiatives. So it's difficult for a company to say, well, this is what we're going to do, this is the structure we're going to follow, and we know that's always going to work. Instead, what we're often seeing is them picking a standard or a system that is common in their sector or industry, ideally together with a couple of value chain partners, so suppliers or customers of them, or key partners, or even competitors at times. So they all use the same systems and standards or information models to report out the information. And that's important because quite often, if you're a large OEM and you're asking, for example, your suppliers to provide carbon footprint data, then you're not the only one asking your supplier of that data, right? So if you ask it in one format and your competitor asks it in a different format, the supplier you both have now has two different reporting ways that they need to interact with. So it's beneficial to everybody to figure out what is happening in your ecosystem, right? Your small group of closely connected companies, and set some common standards there. That doesn't always work out, but that is at least what we see companies trying to do. Let me see if I covered all of your questions there, but yeah, and so how could Korean organizations pick this up? I would recommend a similar approach. Figure out what is your close ecosystem, right? Suppliers, customers, competitors. What can you agree on when it comes to standardization already, or what standards are out there that you can already reuse? And then just get going using that.
그러면 질문을 조금 바꿔 보겠습니다.
Let me change my question. There are many different types of information to be included in the DPP according to the ESPR. But companies might find certain type of information very difficult to collect or to include. What type of information is that?
Question: What information do companies find hard to collect? That's I suppose that the information that they are not sharing, I would assume they find hard to collect, and I mainly know about the information they are sharing, right? Where I see the most difficulty in our projects, it's in information that they find sensitive for their intellectual property or for their competitive advantage, right? That's the information usually most tricky to share. That is not for a technical reason though. That's again information companies already have. They just don't want to share that. So there it becomes very important that you have both a set of agreements on what the information can or cannot be used for by the parties you share it with, as well as some technical systems in place that you can very well shield off information, right? Give people or parties very specific access. Maybe where there are pieces of information that companies don't have them, it's often in the value chain, right? It's information about their suppliers. So for example, what was the carbon footprint that my supplier is responsible for is not something I know, right? What we see there is they usually just ask this in their procurement request. So when they buy goods from their supplier, they expect this information to be added on to the product, if you will. So it becomes a sort of a contract negotiation part. I hope that answers your question.
네, 역시 질문할 게 좀 많이 남아 있지.
I still have many other questions, but due to time constraint, that's okay. Lastly, Mr. O. The question asked by the moderator was, like, out of many eco-design requirements, what is the biggest challenge or concern from the perspective of LG Electronics, instead of saying some specific items? These are new requirements. So whenever there are new requirements being newly introduced, like evaluation criteria, and like there should be clear direction and also clear criteria for the evaluation. That is most challenging part, because we need to put in resources in order to satisfy requirements. Yes, that is up to the companies. However, there should be clear direction in order to respond to this. Otherwise, there will be waste of resources, and also there will be compliance risks from the perspective of companies. So that is our concern whenever there are new requirements emerging. And as for your second question, that is pretty difficult because we have a new government. So there is a chance that they will have new environmentally friendly drive, so that in terms of resource efficiency, I think that you are asking for the opinion of private enterprises. I'm not really sure whether I can represent the entire business, but anyway, I'm responsible for compliance at my company. So as a compliance officer, I think that direction is already well defined. I mean, the global direction is well defined. So I think that we need to follow the same trend. So the difference with the speed and the level. So proactive response is always important. So like, let's say, if there are new regulations emerging in other countries, we can try first to be adaptable, and that way we can enhance our product competitiveness. That would be great. However, but if we are too early, that may lead to some sort of waste, some unnecessary activities. Then there will be fiercer price competitiveness among the companies. So we'd like to take half a step. The first, and it should not be domestic or local regulations only. We need to consider international standardization, or we need to persuade the other countries' regulations. So our regulations should be compatible with other foreign other regulations. That way, our effort would be more effective. So in my opinion, at the end of the day, Ecodesign requires companies to collect more information and disclose more information. However, for SMEs, this kind of response would be very challenging. So at the government level, there should be support institutions for the central government to provide support to SMEs. And also, there should be a foundation for the information provisioning that can be utilized by SMEs. I think that sort of government level initiative that would be required. So it would be great if companies submit that sort of request to the government. That was my intent.
지금 한
So we have only 4 minutes. We started at 3:35, so we can end this session a little later than scheduled. So among our audiences, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. Would you please hand over a mic to the person who raised the hand? We have 2 people here, so let's go one by one. Please speak up. My question goes to Director Henneken regarding DPP. The vast amount of information should be given to consumers by companies. So such information should be easier to understand. So is there any systems or measures to make it easier for consumers to understand?
Maybe this one? Yes, thank you. No, thank you very much for your question. I think you're raising a very important point because there is obviously a question of accessibility and understandability of the information we're going to deliver. First, just to remind that the DPP, of course, will be targeted at consumers, but not only. As the intention with the DPP is to make information available to a wide range of stakeholders, including the market surveillance authorities. And something that we always advocate for is a principle that we call the need to know basis, meaning that each stakeholder should have access to the information that is relevant to them, meaning that the consumer will not necessarily see what the market surveillance authorities will see, because probably the authorities will need another level of granularity and technicality in the information. So hopefully the information for the consumers should be just what they need to know. And again here, I think one of the potential of the DPP is to have the possibility is to include possibility for the OEMs to provide voluntary information on the same, on the same QR code or label. So basically, they could include more consumer-friendly formats on different aspects of the product or sustainability. But this is a point that is, I think, you're raising something that is part of a bigger. Bigger question and bigger reflection on what it is, to which point the consumer can, understand the information, use that information, and are we creating an information overload that will not effectively, help the consumer. So I think that's something that we should all keep in mind, especially the authorities, the government, when designing the DPP, that we need to also take this consumer point of view in consideration, and really focus on what is on the information, the data points that are really important to the consumer. I hope I answered your question.
그 DPP
So regarding DPP, you are currently using the QR method only, or are there any other ways to provide information? Are you developing other ways?
We believe that DPP should be technologically neutral, and there are other ways to provide information. I think it's because DPP will not only apply to electronic products, but as we see here, for example, to batteries and textiles, which are very different products. So I know that there is also an interest in RFID technology, for example, which can make more sense for products like textiles. So there will be a variety of solutions, and we see that it is actually creating also like a market of solution providers. So many of them are emerging now in Europe to provide those different formats to access the DPP. Then again, there will be a question of what will be easier for the consumer, because I think if you multiply too much the options, that might be difficult. So I think we should keep again in mind that it has to be simple and accessible.
시간 때문에
So we will be able to take only one question. Please use a mic. When you look at the presentation slides that were shared yesterday, dishwasher and laundry machine, for those machines, adoption timeline is 26. So I thought DPP will be applied to batteries first, but it seems like the application of DPP for dishwasher and laundry machine, it should be done by next year, so it's very fast. So who can address this question? Ms. Hanneken, I think you can answer this question.
Actually, I'm not sure of the answer, because this is not a product category that we cover at Digital Europe. I know that there are some ongoing studies for these categories of products by the Commission and their Joint Research Center. However, 2026, I'm a little bit surprised as well by 2026, because this seems very, very close. So I'm turning to my colleagues if they have an answer, because that's, to my knowledge, 2027 should be the first, and batteries should be the first DPP.
Yeah, thank you. I can try and elaborate a little bit. So as far as I know, this dishwashers or laundry machines, they are coming up quite quickly, but not for a product passport, only for the energy, further energy and eco-design information, but not a product passport, right? So this is a tricky part. There's sort of two parts there in the eco-design regulation. When it comes to batteries, those are indeed first for a product passport on February 18th or 17th of 2027. Don't quote me on the date there, but February 2027. Then when you look at these tables, for example, as were shared yesterday, when product passport legislation will be published, that includes some product categories that will get legislation in 2026 already. If I'm not mistaken, iron and steel is up that soon, for example. But then that is when the legislation should be out, and then a period will start of implementation, right? So it will be, let's say, a year and a half. Don't quote me on that timeline exactly either. But a time after the legislation is published, that companies actually need to have this implemented. So the 2026 product passport timeline, that is not the case. However, there are a variety of products that will be coming after that, and there is parallel reporting requirements or eco-design requirements that may be applicable to dishwashers. I'm not 100% sure about dishwashers specifically, though.
네, 하고 싶은 질문은 많은데
We have a lot of questions, but what we are lacking is time. Since we are behind schedule, we will conclude the Korea-EU Ecodesign Forum with this. I'd like to thank all the 4 speakers, and also I'd like to thank all our participants and attendees for staying here with us until the end of this forum. This officially concludes the EU-Korea Ecodesign Forum. Thank you very much. Let me have one announcement. If you signed up for networking dinner, please go to the Lewis Hall A on the 4th floor. So if you didn't sign up for that, but still you want to participate, then you can go down to the 1st floor and sign up for the networking dinner. Hopefully you can find your way to the venue. And also please participate in the satisfaction survey. Thank you very much.